There shouldn't be anything dangerous about going to watch a game of football, but in April 1989, 96 Liverpool fans went to see a game at the Hillsborough Stadium in Sheffield, and it cost them their lives. They were crushed to death on the terracing behind the goal.
On April 15th, 1989, Sheffield, England, a football match between Liverpool and Nottingham Forest exploded into chaos. 96 souls were lost. Hundreds more became scarred forever. What began like just another day of football would change British sporting history. Here are 6 worst outdoor deaths ever recorded.
At 2:24, Liverpool fans are seen making the journey by foot from the station to the stadium.
April 15th, 1989, Hillsborough Stadium buzzed with anticipation as Liverpool prepared to face Nottingham Forest in the FA Cup semi-final. But beneath the excitement, a disaster was about to unfold that would change British sport forever. Earlier that afternoon, Liverpool fans queued outside the narrow Leppings Lane turnstiles. The atmosphere was tense but expectant, as thousands tried to enter through just 7 gates. Police monitored the growing crowd on CCTV, but failed to recognize the danger lurking.
Which was being monitored by police that day, shows how the crowd outside was growing by the minute.
Inside the stadium, the central pens behind the goal were already packed, but fans remained in high spirits, unaware of the impending danger. Suddenly, a small boy was lifted from the crush, a chilling signal that something was terribly wrong. Superintendent Roger Marshall, overseeing the outside crowd, realized the situation was becoming critical. He later admitted fearing fatalities as pressure mounted outside the turnstiles.
2:52, with the crowds building and kickoff drawing closer, the police made the decision to open the exit gate. Over the course of 5 minutes,
Many were heading straight for the central pens, unaware they were already dangerously overcrowded. The match began as scheduled, but the disaster was already unfolding behind the Liverpool goal.
it seems initially police thought it was a pitch invasion. But soon people were collapsing on both sides of the fence.
At 3:06 p.m., the referee was finally instructed to stop the match. Medical response was tragically delayed. The first St. John's ambulance volunteer reached the scene at 3:12 p.m. By then, many victims were already dead or dying. The first ambulance arrived pitchside at 3:16 p.m., but it was too late for 96 Liverpool supporters. The scale of the tragedy soon became apparent. 96 men, women, and children lost their lives that day. Hundreds more were injured, many suffering lifelong physical and psychological scars. In the aftermath, blame was initially directed at the fans. However, as investigations unfolded, the truth emerged. This was a preventable tragedy, resulting from catastrophic failures in crowd management, police decision-making, and stadium safety. The Taylor report would later conclude that the main reason for the disaster was the failure of police control, and that the opening of Gate C was a blunder of the first magnitude. In the days that followed, South Yorkshire police spread false stories blaming Liverpool fans for the disaster. The Sun newspaper published its infamous "The Truth" headline, accusing supporters of appalling behavior, claims that were later proven entirely false. Despite overwhelming evidence, no criminal charges were initially filed. The first inquest returned a verdict of accidental death, a decision bitterly contested by victims' families. The fight for justice would last more than 2 decades. In 2012, the Hillsborough Independent Panel finally exonerated the fans and revealed the extent of police cover-up. Prime Minister David Cameron issued a formal apology, calling the tragedy a double injustice.
So on behalf of the government, and indeed our country, I am profoundly sorry that this double injustice has been left uncorrected for so long.
In 2016, new inquest concluded with a verdict of unlawful killing. The jury found that the police failures had caused the deaths and that fans bore no responsibility. For the families, it was vindication after 27 years of struggle. But justice remained elusive. In 2019, former Chief Superintendent David Duckenfield, the match commander, was acquitted of gross negligence manslaughter. The courtroom verdict meant that no one would be held criminally responsible for the deaths of 96 football fans. The Hillsborough disaster stands as Britain's worst sporting tragedy. Its legacy includes fundamental changes to stadium safety, the elimination of standing terraces, and new standards for crowd management. But for the victims' families, the fight for complete justice continues. Their determination and resilience have ensured that the 96 will never be forgotten. The Hillsborough disaster remains a sobering reminder of what happens when institutions fail those they are meant to protect. Why let the Hillsborough tragedy expose the dangers of overcrowded stadiums? The next disaster turned a joyous festival into scenes of chaos and despair.
Just moments after the crush, and many of the festival goers made desperate attempts to help those caught in the chaos.
July 24th, 2010. Duisburg, Germany. What was meant to be a celebration of electronic dance music turned into a living nightmare. Thousands were funneled into a narrow tunnel, the only entrance and exit to the festival grounds. The Love Parade, a festival that started in Berlin in 1989, had grown into a massive free access event, now hosting up to 1.4 million people. But on July 24th, 2010, for the first time, it was held in a confined area, a former freight yard, with a maximum safe capacity of 250,000. The overcrowding was catastrophic.
More vision is emerging at the moments leading up to the disaster. Here, the mood in the tunnel leading to the venue appears to be positive.
And the critical choke point was a 240-meter tunnel under a highway overpass, which was both the sole entry and exit. Police tried to control the flow, even instructing people to turn back when capacity was reached. But thousands kept pushing forward, unaware of the danger ahead. The pressure in the tunnel escalated until it became a deadly bottleneck. The crowd surged, panic set in, and people were trapped, unable to move or breathe. Many were trampled or crushed against walls and staircases. Medical teams later confirmed the cause of death was suffocation and chest compression.
It was a mass panic. The people choked and were trampled on. We received 2 patients here who arrived and had to be resuscitated. They probably choked and didn't get enough oxygen and are now seriously ill.
Emergency responders faced a nightmare. Ambulances struggled to reach the scene through the packed crowd. Police radios malfunctioned and communication broke down. The fear of triggering even more panic delayed declaring an emergency. By the time help arrived, 21 people had died, men and women aged 18 to 38, including victims from Germany, Australia, Italy, Bosnia, Spain, China, and the Netherlands. More than 650 were injured. Survivors recall a blockade, a panic no one could control. Others tried desperately to help those crushed beneath. Some climbed walls and scaffolding to escape. The police admitted being overwhelmed. Their attempt to close off the tunnel briefly caused pressure to build up, worsening the situation. The city of Duisburg was unprepared for a crowd 3 times its size. Officials launched investigations, uncovering a cascade of failures: poor crowd management, inadequate security, and a venue ill-equipped for the scale of the festival. The mayor of Duisburg publicly accepted responsibility, but faced harsh criticism and was eventually removed from office. Trials against organizers and city officials dragged on for years, but many charges were dropped or ended without a verdict. The complexity of assigning blame and the pandemic delayed justice beyond the statute of limitations. Organizers announced the permanent cancellation of the Love Parade out of respect for the victims. A city once proud to host the event was now scarred by tragedy, with candles and flowers marking the tunnel entrance that had become a site of loss. Years later, survivors and families continue to grapple with the trauma. Survivors recall feeling lost in a nightmare, many haunted by the faces of those they couldn't help. Memorials stand as somber reminders of a joyous event that spiraled into disaster. The failure to properly manage the crowd, the flawed venue choice, and miscommunication all combined to create one of the deadliest crowd disasters in recent history. The Love Parade showed how joy turned to sorrow. The next tragedy unfolded before thousands of fans who watched a racing hero's final moments.
Auto racing safety experts said today it may be possible to protect drivers in the kind of crash that killed stock car champion and legend Dale Earnhardt in yesterday's Daytona 500.
On February 18, 2001, Daytona Beach, Florida, the sports world lost a star. Dale Earnhardt Sr., known as the Intimidator, was one of NASCAR's greatest drivers. His aggressive style earned him 7 championships and 76 Winston Cup victories. But at 49 years old, during the final lap of the Daytona 500, everything changed. On that day, Earnhardt was running third, protecting first and second place, his team cars driven by Michael Waltrip and his own son, Dale Jr. What happened next would shock the racing world forever.
Final lap, when his number 3 car crashed nose first into the wall, traveling close to 180 miles per hour.
The cars barrel into turn 4. Earnhardt, running third, tried to block Sterling Marlin's final charge. They touched just lightly at first, but enough to send Earnhardt's black number 3 Chevrolet spinning down onto the apron. He fought to regain control, but the car shot back up the banking directly into the path of Ken Schrader. Schrader's car slammed into the passenger side, instantly changing the impact angle. Earnhardt's car hit the concrete wall head-on at nearly 160 mph. It didn't look catastrophic at first. Even veteran broadcaster Mike Helton thought it was just another tough crash. But as rescue crews rushed to the scene, Ken Schrader, another driver involved in the crash, looked inside Earnhardt's car and immediately signaled for help. Medical teams quickly transported Earnhardt from the scene to Halifax Medical Center, just a mile from the track. Doctors worked desperately for over 20 minutes, but it was all futile. At 5:16 p.m., Dale Earnhardt was officially pronounced dead. NASCAR President Mike Helton made the announcement that shook the sport to its core.
This is undoubtedly one of the toughest announcements that I've ever personally had to make. But after the accident in turn 4 at the end of the Daytona 500, we've lost Dale Earnhardt.
The official cause of death was a basilar skull fracture, the same fatal injury that had claimed 3 other NASCAR drivers in the previous 8 months. The impact was so severe that it broke every bone where the skull met the spine. Earnhardt also suffered multiple other injuries, but the skull fracture was instantly fatal. Earnhardt's death sent shockwaves through the racing world. The man known for his iron will and fearless driving was gone in an instant. Ironically, earlier in the same race, a massive multi-car crash involving 20 cars left every driver uninjured. But a seemingly routine accident claimed the life of the sport's greatest driver. In the aftermath, attention turned to safety. Earnhardt had famously refused to wear the new HANDS device, a head and neck restraint that could have prevented the fatal injury. The device, which was attached to the helmet and seat, had already proven effective in other racing series. Earnhardt dismissed it, saying, "No, it's not comfortable. I don't like it."
He said those were for sissies, and he refused to use the new HANDS device. It's a head and neck brace. What is the brace exactly, and is there a chance that if he had worn it...
The crash investigation revealed multiple contributing factors. Earnhardt's left lap belt had separated, allowing his body to twist forward and to the right inside the car. His open-faced helmet rotated forward on impact, exposing the back of his skull to the fatal force. The combination of the angle, speed, and lack of restraint proved deadly. His death sparked an immediate and sweeping safety revolution. HANDS devices became mandatory. Safer barriers were installed at tracks. Seatbelt systems were redesigned. The car of tomorrow was developed with advanced safety features. But for those who knew him best, the pain was personal and permanent. His son, Dale Earnhardt Jr., recalled his immediate reaction.
"When I realized that was the way that this was going to go, that Dad was gone, I turned and saw J.R. Rhodes and ran to him. There was this noise coming out of me that I can't recreate. I couldn't do it for you right now. It's just like a bellow of shock and sorrow and fear."
The legacy of Dale Earnhardt's final race was more than just a tragic end. It was a catalyst for change that saved countless lives. Since that day, no driver has died in NASCAR's Top 3 series, a testament to the changes his loss inspired. But while Dale Earnhardt's crash shook the world of sports, the next disaster was far more destructive. An entire town reduced to fire and ruin in a single night. July 6, 2013, Lac-Mégantic, Quebec. The town's downtown core erupted in fire and chaos after a runaway train carrying crude oil barreled through the night. Emergency calls flooded in, reporting flames visible for miles and neighborhoods consumed by fire. In those first frantic minutes, survivors later described the scene as hell on earth.
Il n'y en a plus de centre-ville, Richard.
C'est ça que je me fais dire.
Les engins ont probablement parti de Nantes, sont descendus, puis quand ça a rentré au centre-ville, ça tout a pété.
As dawn broke, the scale of destruction became clear. The entire downtown, 40 buildings, had vanished. Charred trees lined empty lots where businesses once stood. Metal fences had melted. The city's library, post office, and historic buildings were all gone. The Mousy Café, once a lively gathering spot, was now a twisted ruin. The explosions rocked the town center, unleashing a fireball 3 times the height of nearby buildings. Witnesses recalled an infernal noise, sparks from the wheels, and a runaway train hurtling through the night without headlights or warning signals. The force of the blast sent a river of burning oil into the lake, while others jumped from burning buildings to escape the flames. Within hours, engineer Tom Harding received devastating news. His train, left parked on a descending grade, had rolled into town and exploded. Panic and disbelief filled the recording as he realized the scale of the tragedy.
It's worse than that, my friend. Why? It's your train that rolled down? No. Yes, sir. No, RJ. Yes, sir. Holy.
The initial blast was followed by multiple secondary explosions as tank cars ruptured. Flames shot 2 stories high, visible from miles away. The fire's heat could be felt 2 kilometers distant. Burning oil flooded the town's storm sewers, erupting through manholes and basements across downtown. In daylight, the devastation was staggering. Rubble and twisted metal lined the streets. Only chimneys remained where buildings once stood. Cars abandoned by fleeing residents sat charred in parking lots. The Red Cross established emergency shelters as 1,000 people were evacuated, many with no homes left to return to. The train had rolled 11 kilometers downhill, gaining speed until it entered town at 105 kilometers per hour, 6 times the posted limit for that curve. 63 of 72 tank cars derailed. The remaining 9 at the rear were only saved through the desperate efforts of local workers using heavy equipment to pull them clear. The official investigation later found only 7 handbrakes had been applied, nowhere near the 17 required for a train of that size and weight on a grade. The required brake test, performed incorrectly, had given a false sense of security.
I miss her smile, I miss her hug, and it's still in my mind every day, you know?
47 people were dead, 42 confirmed, 5 never found. Many victims were vaporized in the intense heat. 30 died in the Mousy Café alone. The death toll made this the 4th deadliest rail accident in Canadian history, and the worst involving a non-passenger train. Survivors struggled to process what remained. The psychological scars ran deep, with many describing persistent anxiety and nightmare memories. Hours before the disaster, engineer Harding had reported his lead locomotive was emitting thick black smoke. The fire department responded, extinguished a small fire, and shut down the engine, standard procedure. But with the engine off, the air brakes slowly lost pressure. Without enough handbrakes applied, the train began its deadly descent. The legal fallout was complex. Engineer Tom Harding, his supervisor, and a rail traffic controller faced 47 counts of criminal negligence causing death. The railway company itself was charged with 47 counts as well. But the investigation revealed systemic failures at every level, including regulatory oversight, corporate safety culture, and industry standards, all of which contributed to the disaster. Following the deadly incident, rail safety regulations underwent major revisions on both sides of the US-Canada border. 2-person crews became mandatory for hazardous materials trains. New standards were set for tank cars. Emergency response plans were required for crude oil shipments. But for Lac Mégantic, these changes came too late.
After the service, the church bells rang 47 times, once for each of the victims.
In the aftermath, rebuilding began, but the cultural and architectural heritage was gone forever. The community acknowledged that normal would never return. The scars, both physical and emotional, remained as lasting reminders of that tragic night. The full story of Lac Mégantic was one of human error, systemic failure, and unimaginable consequence. It stood as a stark warning, a testament to what happened when safety systems failed, vigilance lapsed, and disaster found a community unprepared. The lessons learned here changed rail safety forever, but the cost remained etched in the fabric of a town that would never be the same. The Lac Mégantic explosions devastated a small town overnight. The disaster in the next story showed nature's raw power, as towering waves swallowed coastlines and lives in seconds.
26th of December, 2004, a date etched in our memory. It was on this day that the world woke up to one of the deadliest natural disasters in recorded history.
The morning of December 26, 2004, began like any other across the Indian Ocean's tranquil coast. But that peace was shattered at 7:58 a.m. when the Earth's crust ripped open off Sumatra's northwest coast, releasing energy equivalent to 23,000 Hiroshima atomic bombs. This undersea earthquake, measuring a staggering 9.1 on the Richter scale, unleashed one of the deadliest natural disasters in recorded history. As the seismic shockwaves pulsed through the Earth, they triggered a series of massive ocean waves, tsunamis, that radiated outward at 500 miles per hour. Within 15 minutes, the first of these waves slammed into the densely populated shores of Banda Aceh, Indonesia, with walls of water towering over 100 feet high. There was no warning system in place, and most residents had no idea that the trembling ground was a sign of disaster.
I know, I can see it. That wave is a good 15, 20 feet tall.
Across Thailand, beachgoers watched in confusion as the sea suddenly pulled back, exposing the ocean floor. Moments later, a massive frothing wall of water surged toward the shore, 15 to 20 feet high, obliterating everything in its path. Panic erupted as people scrambled for higher ground, but the tsunami's power was unstoppable. The devastation spread outward in every direction. In the 9 hours following the earthquake, 14 aftershocks, some measuring up to 7.3, rattled the region. The tsunamis raced across the Indian Ocean, reaching Sri Lanka, India, and Thailand within 2 hours, then slamming into the Maldives and East Africa. Even Mauritius and the eastern coast of Africa felt the impact more than 7 hours later. The numbers alone tell a grim story. The official death toll stands at 227,198 lives lost across 14 countries, but some estimates push the number closer to 275,000. Indonesia suffered the heaviest blow, with Banda Aceh's population devastated. Sri Lanka and India each reported tens of thousands dead or missing, including entire fishing communities wiped out in seconds. The Maldives, though spared the highest waves, faced economic losses equal to 45% of its GDP. Even distant Somalia lost nearly 300 people as waves crossed 5,000 kilometers of open ocean.
The world watched in horror and was introduced to the word tsunami.
One of the disaster's most haunting aspects was its unpredictability. The Indian Ocean had no tsunami warning system. While the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center picked up the initial quake, there was no established protocol to alert the Indian Ocean countries. Many victims had no idea what was happening until it was too late. Yet in some places, oral traditions saved lives, like on Indonesia's Semulu Island, where tales of a 1907 tsunami prompted residents to flee to higher ground after feeling the earthquake's tremors.
Indonesia, situated along the Ring of Fire, is prone to earthquakes. So no alarm bells rang. But this was no ordinary earthquake.
The global response was unprecedented. Over $14 billion in aid poured in from around the world. Relief efforts were massive, with organizations like World Vision raising $350 million and providing food, shelter, and medical care to millions. But the recovery was slow. Some areas took years to rebuild, and the psychological scars lingered far longer. The disaster also sparked critical changes. The Indian Ocean Tsunami Warning System was established, covering 28 countries and using seismic data, ocean buoys, and warning centers to prevent future tragedies. Coastal communities invested in disaster preparedness, early warning education, and evacuation planning. Yet the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami remains a vivid reminder of nature's destructive power. It reshaped coastlines, devastated communities, and forever changed how the world thinks about disaster preparedness. For those who survived, every December 26th is a painful anniversary, a day when the world was forcibly reminded that, in the face of nature's fury, human vulnerability knows no borders. While the tsunami struck with nature's unstoppable force, the next tragedy came from human hands, when a joyful marathon turned into a scene of terror and heartbreak.
Just before 2:50 p.m., this is the viewpoint seen by many of the 26,000 marathon runners who are approaching the finish line.
April 15, 2013, 2:49 p.m., the finish line of the world's oldest annual marathon erupted in chaos as a powerful explosion tore through a crowd of spectators on Boylston Street. Just 12 seconds later, a second blast rocked the area 1 block away, shattering the peace of Patriots' Day in Boston. The 2 pressure cooker bombs, packed with deadly shrapnel, instantly transformed celebration into terror. The attacks were timed for maximum impact, hitting the finish line section when it was packed with both runners completing the race and spectators cheering them on. The casualties were devastating. 3 dead, including Martin Richard, 23-year-old Lou Lindsay, and 29-year-old Crystal Campbell. More than 260 others were injured, many losing limbs. 16 people became amputees in a matter of seconds. As the city reeled from the shock, law enforcement agencies at every level mobilized. The FBI took charge of the investigation, working alongside Boston Police, the Massachusetts State Police, and dozens of other agencies. Their first task: identify the perpetrators before they could strike again.
But at 2:45, you see Johar stop in front of the busy Forum restaurant. That's him in the white circle wearing the white hat. At this point, they've split up, and Tamerlan has made his way closer to the finish line.
Surveillance footage revealed the calculated nature of the attack. Dzhokhar Tsarnaev was seen deliberately placing his backpack, containing the second bomb, near the crowd at Forum restaurant, right beside the Richards family. His brother Tamerlan positioned himself closer to the finish line with the first explosive. Both maintained a chilling calm as they blended into the crowd. The immediate aftermath was chaos. Medical personnel, already present for the marathon, rushed to treat the wounded. Bystanders became rescuers, using belts and shirts as makeshift tourniquets. Emergency services flooded the scene as the scale of the disaster became clear. The bombs were carefully constructed weapons of mass destruction, designed to maim and kill. Investigators later found both devices were pressure cooker bombs packed with nails, ball bearings, and black powder. They were placed in ordinary-looking backpacks and detonated remotely, following instructions from an al-Qaeda-affiliated online magazine. As smoke filled the air and screams echoed through the streets, the Boston Strong spirit emerged. Victims were carried to safety, their clothes stained red. First responders and civilians alike defied danger to help the wounded. The finish line, once a symbol of triumph, now marked the site of unspeakable tragedy. That night, every hospital in Boston was put on high alert. Surgeons performed dozens of emergency amputations. Trauma teams worked through the night to save as many lives as possible. The city's medical system was pushed to its limits, but not a single patient died from their injuries.
But then there's this. 30 minutes later, Johar is seen on video at the Whole Foods in Cambridge, calmly buying milk and then coming right back to exchange it. While he was at the store, the chaos continued on Boylston.
His demeanor was disturbingly normal, just hours after committing mass murder. For those who survived, life was forever changed. Jessica Kensky, a newlywed watching the race with her husband, described the scene as a war zone.
People were screaming, our eardrums were blown out. You just heard yourself breathing. There was smoke, there was blood. This was a war zone, something I'd never experienced before.
Her injuries were severe, but she survived. Her husband lost a leg. First responders like firefighter Matthew Patterson faced impossible situations.
She was amputated above the knee. There was barely enough to apply a tourniquet.
He recalled about treating Jane Richard. Her brother Martin could not be saved. The full horror of the attack became clear as the investigation unfolded. Prosecutors revealed a tweet Joe Carr sent 2 days after the bombing.
I'm a stress-free kind of guy.
The chilling indifference was matched only by the meticulous planning of the attack. President Obama addressed the nation from the White House.
Make no mistake, we will get to the bottom of this. Any responsible individuals, any responsible groups will feel the full weight of justice.
The commitment was clear. Boston would not be intimidated. The image of hundreds of unclaimed yellow runner bags became a symbol of lost innocence and destroyed dreams. Among them were the bags of those who never finished the race, and those who never would again. The Boston Marathon bombing wasn't just an attack on a race, it was an attack on community, hope, and resilience. What was meant to be a celebration of endurance and unity became a haunting reminder of how quickly peace can be shattered. These outdoor tragedies remind us how quickly moments of life, joy, or routine can turn into scenes of loss and sorrow. In an instant, entire communities were left shattered, families torn apart, and lives forever changed. They serve as powerful reminders of the unpredictability of life and how tragedy can strike when it's least expected.